The 4 suicide attempts form a quiet but devastating audit of Tony Soprano's failures in every role he occupies. Each attempt is tethered to a different kind of relationship, and together, they outline the full scope of his personal wreckage.
I'm sorry about what happened. You won't return my phone calls.
You know what? Go fuck yourself.
Gloria Trillo represents the romantic sphere. Tony is fundamentally incapable of sustaining a healthy, loving relationship, whether with his wife or his mistresses.
Grandma, Dad's mom.
What'd she say?
That it's all a big nothing.
What is?
Life.
Anthony Jr. reflects his failure as a father, raised in an emotional environment so stunting that despair becomes a learned response.
Suppose you hadn't been able to reach me and I come over your house and I find you dead.
Artie Bucco exposes the absence of genuine friendship in Tony's life. Tony cannot express platonic love without control, resentment, or exploitation. Eugene Pontecorvo stands as the professional indictment. Tony's selfish, impulsive leadership traps even loyal earners in situations with no humane exit.
Oh my God, look who's here!
There are countless other examples of Tony's damage, but the pattern is striking. Every character who attempts suicide is connected to him in a distinct way.
How's Gloria Trillo? She's still,
It's a terrible tragedy.
And each attempt is a direct or indirect consequence of his actions, negligence, or gravitational pull.
I think she tried to commit suicide.
Oh, fuck you!
Irina belongs on this list as well, another emotional casualty of Tony's inability to disengage without destruction.
Call a vice superfecta.
Vin Makazian's collapse follows the same logic. Buried in debt and disgraced after being caught at the bordello, his usefulness to Tony evaporates the moment his badge does. Once fired, Vin's survival would have become inconvenient at best. Davey Scatino briefly pointing a gun at his own head fits the pattern too. Proximity to Tony reliably turns personal failure into existential despair. If Tony's presence reliably turns intimacy into despair, it also teaches those nearest to him how to redirect that pressure outward. Survival, here, is not innocence preserved, but damage redistributed. Carmela Soprano treats other women as rivals, in a competition only she seems to be playing, rarely missing an opportunity to diminish them.
They found a lump under my arm.
Oh my God.
They biopsied it. I get the results in a couple of days.
Angie is the clearest example, discouraging her from leaving a miserable marriage, sneering at her for working a regular job, then attempting to flaunt her car, an effort that collapses the moment Angie's independence outpaces Carmela's performance of superiority.
Oh, Angie, finally.
Sorry. I had these sales reps in my office.
Even Angie's work calls draw thinly veiled contempt.
Carmela's bringing something nice to the housewoman for Ginny.
With Ginny, Carmela sinks lower, posturing while Ginny's life unravels, and quietly savoring the loss of the house Carmela herself still possesses.
Oh God, you know, I'm only doing...
Janice fares no better, receiving a prediction of inevitable infidelity while trying on wedding dresses. Ro is subjected to the casual cruelty of having her dead son raised at dinner, likely triggered by Carmela's irritation at Ro receiving attention she no longer commands.
I don't care what your psychic said.
Adriana is reduced to a prop, her mother dismissed as delusional, her death invoked selectively when useful, and ignored when inconvenient.
Long time no see!
How are you, Mrs. Soprano?
Even Charmaine and Hunter ultimately expose Carmela's insecurity,
This budget.
most memorably when her attempt to belittle Hunter is obliterated by the revelation that Hunter is in medical school, leaving Carmela unable to even feign grace.
Is it true what she said? She's quitting pre-med?
Her disappointment that Meadow chose law over pediatrics only reinforces the pattern. These moments are not random cruelty, they are projections. Each woman embodies a truth Carmela refuses to face: the courage to leave, the cost of knowing what Tony is capable of, the humiliation of infidelity, the fragility of material security. Carmela attacks what she fears becoming, what she fears losing, and what she lacks the nerve to confront. Carmela's projections reveal how proximity to power reshapes the self, not through ideology, but through habit and erosion. The same process unfolds elsewhere, under different uniforms and justifications.
Yeah, when you threatened to wait till my kids got home. I'm sure Agent Harris.
Agent Harris and Tony Soprano are far more alike than is comfortable to admit. By the end of the series, their tentative friendship exposes Harris not as a detached observer, but as a parallel figure, quietly unraveling under similar pressures.
We had intel a Salafist cell was at Newark Airport boarding somebody into a 767 in London.
His promotion to the polished world of counterterrorism carries the same corrosive weight Tony feels after becoming boss. Stress masquerading as success. The physical toll is telling. Weight gain, hair loss, the visible erosion of control. It is the same slow decay, just in a better suit.
Hey, probably another hour.
The snowy car scene makes the comparison unavoidable. Harris's strained phone call with his wife reveals a marriage fraying under late nights and professional obsession. Hardly different from Tony's domestic collapse, only without Carmela's practiced tolerance. The irony sharpens when Harris is later shown sleeping with a coworker, an affair that conveniently delivers Phil Leotardo's location and seals his fate. Professional misconduct disguised as necessity mirrors Tony's moral flexibility almost beat for beat.
Calls traced back to a payphone in Oyster Bay, Long Island.
After years of surveillance, Harris has absorbed more than evidence. He has internalized Tony's rhythms, compromises, and rationalizations.
Good to see you. I was in the neighborhood. I want to introduce you to my new partner.
This recognition explains why he gravitates toward Tony while clinging to the thinnest veneer of professionalism. Harris never appeared driven by moral crusade or personal animus. He was simply a man doing his job. That detachment makes his emotional closeness, nearly tearful during the Green Grove tapes, all the more unsettling. There is little separating the personalities drawn to law enforcement from those drawn to organized crime. The distinction lies less in character than in trajectory. Anyway, $4 a pound. What emerges is not a moral contrast, but a shared operating logic, where flexibility replaces belief and outcomes justify erosion. Tony's posture toward culture and conscience follows the same pattern, less conviction than calibration.
It's anti-Italian discrimination. Columbus Day.
Tony Soprano is often mistaken for a cultural traditionalist simply because he occupies the top seat in a deeply regressive organization. In practice, he is noticeably more flexible than the men beneath him, and far less interested in moral crusades than they are. One might expect the boss to be the loudest voice demanding Vito's execution, yet Tony never shows much concern for what anyone does in private. The outrage largely comes from others. Even Patsy remains indifferent. Tony's position is not rooted in tolerance so much as indifference, which, in this environment, reads as radical restraint. That same selective pragmatism appears elsewhere.
Hey, I'm Noah Tannenbaum.
He does not disown his daughter for dating outside her race, limiting his response to crude remarks rather than decisive punishment. A low bar, perhaps, but a meaningful one in context.
This Columbus Day protest, so we need somebody to make it go away.
He dismisses the Columbus controversy as embarrassing theater, recognizing it as a distraction from the only tradition he truly respects: profit. Tony is capable of shedding the more irrational elements of inherited identity when they interfere with efficiency. His personal volatility, rage, depression, paranoia, frequently disrupts this clarity. But his general posture toward cultural difference remains transactional rather than dogmatic. When business is involved, Tony's ideology aligns neatly with that of any wealthy opportunist. If someone earns, they are tolerated. Vito's value lies not in who he is, but in what he delivers. Tony is visibly uncomfortable with homosexuality, Yet discomfort is not the same as conviction. As long as the money keeps arriving in heavy envelopes, moral revulsion becomes negotiable.
Anyone in particular you want to give us to? What color had the biggest problem with it?
This sets him apart from figures like Carlo and Polly, whose disgust is sincere, unproductive, and loud.
If he don't wanted to pursue that lifestyle, he should have done so quietly. He was, wasn't he?
Even Silvio's dry observation that discretion, not identity, was the real issue, underscores how thin the supposed moral line actually is. This is not progressivism in any principled sense. It is apathy with exceptions, money being the most reliable one. Others, including Christopher in his own limited way, display flashes of modern awareness. But Tony embodies the contradiction most clearly. He is too contemporary for the mob and too compromised to escape it. His conscience, such as it is, does not guide him toward virtue. It merely reminds him that he knows better, which is precisely why it punishes him with panic. Ultimately, Tony's stance is simple. He may flinch at what unsettles him, but he will not sabotage a profitable arrangement over private behavior. Morality bends, revenue does not. Tony's moral elasticity keeps the machine running, but it also determines who is allowed to fray in silence and who is worth protecting. Vin Makazian is what that logic produces when usefulness replaces loyalty and exhaustion is mistaken for expendability. The show's single biggest writing misstep was eliminating Vin Makazian far too early. His death in the first season wasn't tragic inevitability, it was squandered potential. John Hurd brought too much gravity, and Vin offered too many narrative possibilities to be discarded before the series even understood its own longevity.
This better be good. I was taking my kid fishing.
Ah, Jesus, what? No, how you...
As a recurring presence, Vin could have drifted in and out of the story.
Hey, Vin, how you doing?
Feeding Tony information, running small errands, and spiraling quietly in the background, adding texture rather than serving as disposable plot fuel. His premature exit feels like collateral damage from a first season written in panic, cramming every major arc into a single sprint. Junior, Livia, Mikey, all burned at once, as if cancellation loomed around the corner. With foresight, the material could easily have stretched across 2 seasons. Big Pussy could have remained simply one of the guys for longer. Richie Aprile could have anchored a focused second season, and Pussy's Reckoning could have landed later with real weight. That alone would have bought Vin the space to exist independently, rather than being tethered to another character's downfall.
I'm sorry, I know you like him.
That tethering was the real mistake. Vin was too strong a character, and Hurd too commanding an actor, to die solely in service of someone else's arc.
He was not happy with himself.
His depression and eventual suicide could still have happened, but after years of erosion, not as an early footnote. Had it arrived 4 or 5 seasons in, it would have landed with devastating force instead of retrospective regret. The lone consolation is his ghostly return in the test stream, crooning 3 times a lady. It's a bittersweet reminder that Tony's subconscious never let him go, even years later. Ironically, Vin was also something of a narrative cheat code, a corrupt police captain who could hand Tony answers, reducing uncertainty. Once he's gone, information becomes scarcer, danger more diffuse.
He's into pussy, big. This fucking Makazian.
The replacement, a low-level beat cop, never carries the same weight, and the world feels riskier for it.
Hey! Vin, will you fucking do it?
A crooked Jersey cop and a degenerate gambler with a badge made for a perfect pairing. Vin Makazian deserved better. So did Mikey Palmise, another casualty of a show that learned too late how patient it could afford to be. Makazian's absence exposes how lethal Tony's gravity can be once it's allowed to work uninterrupted, stripping away buffers until only raw psychological pressure remains. Gloria enters the story where that pressure is no longer externalized, but fully personalized. Gloria Trillo remains one of the most underrated foils in the series, and, aside from Janice, stands among its most morally repellent figures, if not its most unsettling overall. She is also one of the very few people who genuinely frighten Tony, which alone places her in rare company. Unlike many antagonists, she challenges him without sliding into caricature.
Oh, Tony, come on. I'm sorry about what happened. You won't return my phone calls.
You know what? Go fuck yourself.
Her volatile blend of vulnerability and fury gives their scenes a crackling tension that feels dangerously real. Her arc in the third season lands with greater force than much of the domestic drama, precisely because she mirrors Tony so cleanly.
Shit with my family and other crap.
His terror of losing his family is reflected in her complete estrangement from hers, a wound that quietly governs her behavior and accelerates her collapse. Their relationship is not a detour from the show's themes, but a concentrated version of them. The performance is among the series' most electric. Gloria shifts seamlessly between fragile and terrifying, often within the same breath, a balancing act that deserves serious awards recognition.
Gloria Trillo, Globe Mercedes.
Even Tony, intelligent, perceptive, and streetwise, seems genuinely blindsided by how quickly the alluring woman he meets in a therapist's waiting room reveals something far more unstable.
Talk about the family. Poor you.
Moments like the zoo scene, punctuated by her cutting "poor you," are masterclasses in acting, with Tony registering dread he barely understands. For all her cruelty, Gloria remains one of the few characters who inspires real sadness.
Gloria Trillo, she's still, hanging around.
She is visibly unwell, receives no meaningful help, and entering Tony's orbit only worsens the damage. The circumstances of their meeting alone would be enough to haunt any therapist with guilt. Labeling her despicable oversimplifies the case. She is guilty of an affair and emotional excess, yes, but the discomfort she generates comes less from villainy than from how brutally human her unraveling feels. What Gloria exposes in miniature is not an aberration, but a pattern. The damage Tony inflicts is rarely dramatic in intent, only relentless in effect. The same emotional indifference that accelerates her collapse governs how he handles the lives tethered to his authority.
She left me an inheritance, Tom.
Just over $2 million.
Tony refusing to let Eugene relocate to Florida, without offering anything resembling coherent reasoning, and outsourcing the rejection to Silvio right after the Teddy hit, stands as one of the most gratuitously cruel decisions of his reign. Recency bias may sharpen the sting, but it is difficult to identify a move that competes with it for sheer indifference. Yes, the rules are clear. Once you are in, you are in. Eugene was foolish to believe he merited an exception. Walking away outright was never an option.
We've talked about Florida, okay? Gene, that's not gonna happen.
And his naivete extended even further in imagining federal authorities would politely look the other way. That particular fantasy alone should have disqualified him from the conversation. Still, incompetence does not absolve Tony. Eugene's mistake was not the desire to leave, but the way he framed it.
Dan and me and the kids, you know how much we love Florida, right?
What, do you want to put some money on the street down there?
Had he proposed relocating his family while continuing to operate, putting money on the street and expanding business interests, Tony would have entertained it. He always does when revenue is involved. The idea of setting up shop, rather than disappearing, was the only pitch that ever had a chance. Presented as growth, not escape. Presented as Tony's opportunity, not Eugene's freedom. Instead, Eugene positioned it as a one-time bribe and a permanent exit, guaranteeing refusal.
I got it. We buy a vacation place in Florida, a condo.
He could have bought the house, sent his family ahead, and handled the transition quietly. He could have argued Florida needed stabilizing, framed himself as a problem solver rather than a deserter. He did none of this. Tony, predictably, responded with inflexibility masquerading as principle, never intending to follow through on anything beyond control.
You took an oath, Gene. There's no retiring from this.
Well, I thought about that. And there was Joe Banana.
An oath was invoked, loyalty demanded, and the door slammed shut. Whether this ranks above suffocating Christopher is debatable, but it belongs near the top. This is not a league with trades, and Tony never lets assets walk away unless he is finished draining them. Subscribe for sharp, unsentimental breakdowns of TV's most self-destructive characters, because someone has to say what the shows are actually doing.